The letter trembled in my hands, its edges worn and yellowed with age. I hadn't meant to snoop, but when I saw it peeking out from beneath Dean's stack of bills, curiosity got the better of me. Now, standing in his study, my heart raced as I unfolded the paper, revealing a secret that would change everything. "Evelyn, where are you?" Dean's voice echoed from downstairs, startling me. I quickly refolded the letter and shoved it back into its hiding place. "Coming!" I called, trying to keep my voice steady as I hurried out of the room. Dean was waiting at the bottom of the stairs, car keys in hand. "I'm heading out. Dad needs his medication in an hour." "Where are you going?" I asked, unable to keep the suspicion out of my voice. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. "Just some errands. I'll be back later." As the front door slammed behind him, I sighed and made my way to the living room, where Arthur, my father-in-law, sat in his wheelchair by the window. "Everything all right, dear?" Arthur asked, his kind eyes crinkling with concern. I forced a smile. "Of course. How are you feeling today?" "Oh, same as always. But don't change the subject. What's troubling you?" I hesitated, then sat down on the couch across from him. "Arthur, have you ever felt like there's something you don't know about your own family?" He chuckled softly. "My dear, every family has its secrets. But what's brought this on?" Before I could answer, the doorbell rang. I excused myself and went to answer it, finding Dean's Aunt Mary on the porch. "Evelyn, I hope I'm not interrupting," she said, enveloping me in a warm hug. "Not at all. Come in," I replied, grateful for her presence. Mary had always been a rock for me, especially since I'd quit my nursing job to care for Arthur full-time. As we settled in the kitchen with cups of tea, Mary studied my face. "Something's bothering you? Is it Dean again?" I nodded, feeling the weight of everything pressing down on me. "I found a letter in his study," I confessed. "I didn't read it, but, Mary, I think he's hiding something from me. And it's not just that. The way he's been acting lately, the secretive phone calls, the unexplained absences." Mary reached across the table and squeezed my hand. "Evelyn, you're one of the strongest women I know. You gave up your career to care for Arthur, and I've seen how much love and dedication you pour into this family, but you can't keep sacrificing yourself for people who don't appreciate it." "I don't know what to do," I whispered, feeling tears prick at my eyes. "First things first," Mary said firmly. "You need to confront Dean about that letter. Whatever it is, you deserve the truth." Just then we heard the front door open and Dean's voice called out, "I'm home." Mary and I exchanged a look. "No time like the present. Just a sec," she murmured, giving my hand one last squeeze before standing up. As Dean walked into the kitchen, his eyes widened in surprise at the sight of his aunt. "Mary, what are you doing here?" "Just visiting," she replied coolly. "But I think you and Evelyn need to talk. I'll go keep Arthur company." As Mary left the room, Dean turned to me with a questioning look. I took a deep breath, steeling myself for what was to come. "Dean, we need to talk about the letter I found in your study." His face paled. "What letter?" "The one you've been hiding. I didn't read it, but I know it's important. What are you keeping from me?" Dean's expression hardened. "You had no right to go through my things. And you have no right to keep secrets that affect this family." I shot back, my voice rising. "I've given up everything to take care of your father, to support you. The least you can do is be honest with me." For a moment we stood there in tense silence. Then Dean's shoulders slumped. "You're right," he said quietly. "There's something I need to tell you, but you're not going to like it." As he began to speak, I felt my world tilting on its axis, knowing that whatever came next would change our lives forever. I stared at the pile of bills on the kitchen table, my stomach churning. How had it come to this? Dean's revelation about his gambling debts had left me reeling, but the reality of our financial situation was even worse than I'd imagined. "Evelyn?" Arthur's voice called from the living room. "Is everything all right?" I quickly shoved the bills into a drawer and plastered on a smile as I walked into the living room. "Everything's fine, Arthur. How about some lunch?" As I prepared a simple meal for us, I couldn't help but think about how different my life had become. Just 2 years ago, I was a respected nurse with a promising career ahead of me. Now I was struggling to make ends meet while caring for my father-in-law full-time. "You're awfully quiet today," Arthur observed as we ate. I sighed, unable to hide my distress any longer. "I'm sorry, Arthur, it's just... things are a bit tight right now, financially speaking." Arthur's brow furrowed with concern. Has Dean not been providing enough? It's complicated, I said, not wanting to burden him with the truth about his son's irresponsible behavior. Just then, the front door slammed, and Dean strode into the room. Hey, Dad, he said, barely glancing at me. I'm heading out again. Don't wait up. Dean, wait, I called, following him to the door. We need to talk about the bills. There's not enough to cover everything this month. He shrugged, avoiding my gaze. Figure it out. I've got things to take care of. As he walked out, leaving me once again to deal with the mess he'd created, I felt a surge of anger and frustration. How much longer could I keep this up? The phone rang, startling me out of my thoughts. It was Mary. Evelyn, dear, how are you holding up? Her warm voice came through the line. I couldn't hold back anymore. The tears I'd been fighting all day finally spilled over. Oh, Mary, I choked out. It's worse than we thought. Dean's gambling. He's put us in a terrible position. I'm coming over, Mary said firmly. We'll figure this out together. An hour later, Mary and I sat at the kitchen table, surrounded by bills and bank statements. The reality of our situation was laid bare before us. Evelyn, Mary said gently, you can't keep going on like this. Dean's behavior is putting you and Arthur at risk. I nodded, feeling a strange mix of relief and dread at having someone else acknowledge the gravity of the situation. I know, but what can I do? I can't just abandon Arthur. Mary's eyes lit up with an idea. What if we looked into assisted living for Arthur? Somewhere he'd be well cared for, and you could go back to nursing. The thought had crossed my mind before, but I'd always pushed it away, feeling guilty. I don't know, Mary. It feels like giving up. It's not giving up, she insisted. It's taking care of yourself so you can better take care of others. You're a brilliant nurse, Evelyn. The world needs you back out there. As we talked through the possibilities, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in months. Maybe there was a way out of this mess after all. Our conversation was interrupted by the sound of a key in the lock. Dean stumbled in, reeking of alcohol. What's going on here? He slurred, eyeing Mary suspiciously. I stood up, my resolve strengthening. We're discussing options, Dean. Things can't go on like this. His face darkened. What's that supposed to mean? Before I could respond, Arthur's voice called out from the living room, sounding distressed. Evelyn? Dean, I need help. As I rushed to Arthur's side, with Dean stumbling behind me, I knew that a critical moment had arrived. Something had to change, and soon. The weight of the decisions before me pressed down, but for the first time in a long while, I felt ready to face them head-on. The early morning light filtered through the curtains as I sat at Arthur's bedside, my eyes heavy from another sleepless night. Dean hadn't come home again, and the weight of his absence pressed down on me like a physical force. Evelyn, dear, Arthur's weak voice broke through my thoughts. You look exhausted. Why don't you get some rest? I forced a smile. I'm fine, Arthur. How are you feeling this morning? Before he could answer, the front door slammed, and Dean's unsteady footsteps echoed through the house. My heart raced as I braced myself for what was to come. Where have you been? I demanded as Dean stumbled into the room, reeking of alcohol and cheap perfume. He waved dismissively. Out. What's it to you? Arthur's face fell, his disappointment in his son palpable. Dean, son, this isn't right. Evelyn deserves better. Dean's eyes flashed with anger. Stay out of this, Dad. It's none of your business. I stepped between them, my voice low and firm. That's enough, Dean. Go sleep it off. As Dean skulked away, I turned back to Arthur, my heart breaking at the sadness in his eyes. I'm so sorry, Arthur. You shouldn't have to see this. He reached out and squeezed my hand. It's not your fault, my dear. You've been nothing but a blessing to this family. Later that afternoon, as I was preparing Arthur's medication, my phone buzzed with a text from Mary. Need to talk. Can you meet me at the cafe in an hour? Anxiety gnawed at my stomach as I made my way to the cafe. Mary was already there, her face grave as I sat down across from her. Evelyn, I've discovered something, she said without preamble. Dean's been making large withdrawals from Arthur's accounts. The world seemed to tilt on its axis. What? How is that possible? Mary slid a stack of bank statements across the table. He must have gotten power of attorney at some point. Evelyn, he's been siphoning off thousands of dollars. My hands shook as I flipped through the papers, the evidence of Dean's betrayal laid out in black and white. How could he do this to his own father? I'm so sorry, dear, Mary said, reaching out to squeeze my hand. But you need to know the truth. This can't go on. As I drove home, my mind raced with the implications of what I'd learned. How could I confront Dean? How could I protect Arthur? I walked into the house to find Dean pacing in the living room, his face flushed with anger. Where have you been? He demanded. Dad needed his medication an hour ago. Guilt and anger warred within me. I was out, and don't you dare lecture me about responsibilities when you've been stealing from your own father. Dean's face paled. What are you talking about? I pulled out the bank statements. I know everything, Dean. How could you? For a moment, he looked like he might deny it. Then his expression hardened. You don't understand. I had debts to pay. I had no choice. There's always a choice, I spat. And you chose to betray your family. Our shouting match was interrupted by a crash from Arthur's room. We both raced in to find him on the floor, his wheelchair overturned. Arthur, I cried, kneeling beside him. Are you all right? He groaned in pain. I heard shouting. I was trying to come see what was wrong. As I helped Arthur back into bed, checking him for injuries, Dean hovered uselessly in the doorway. The contrast between his neglect and Arthur's concern for us, even in his weakened state, was stark. I turned to Dean, my voice cold. This ends now. I want you out of this house by tomorrow. His eyes widened in disbelief. You can't be serious. This is my house. Not anymore, I said, my resolve strengthening with each word. I'm calling a lawyer in the morning. We're getting a divorce, Dean, and I'm going to make sure Arthur is protected from you. As Dean stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I sat on the edge of Arthur's bed, my hand in his. The road ahead would be difficult, but for the first time in months, I felt a glimmer of hope. Change was coming, and I was ready to face it head on. The morning after my confrontation with Dean, I woke to an eerie silence in the house. My heart raced as I rushed to Arthur's room, fearing the worst. To my relief, he was sleeping peacefully. As I checked his vitals, I steeled myself for the day ahead. Today was the day I would meet with the divorce lawyer. I had just finished helping Arthur with his breakfast when the doorbell rang. My stomach dropped as I opened the door to find Dean standing there, looking haggard but determined. We need to talk, Evelyn, he said, pushing past me into the house. I crossed my arms, standing my ground. I have nothing to say to you, Dean. I'm meeting with a lawyer today. It's over. His face contorted with anger. You can't do this to me, to us. Think about Dad. I am thinking about Arthur, I shot back. I'm thinking about how you've been stealing from him, neglecting him. He deserves better, and so do I. Dean's eyes narrowed. You don't know what you're talking about. You have no idea what I've been dealing with. Then enlighten me, Dean, I challenged. What could possibly justify what you've done? He hesitated, then reached into his pocket and pulled out a crumpled piece of paper. With a start, I recognized it as the letter I'd found in his study weeks ago. Read it, he said, thrusting it towards me. With trembling hands, I unfolded the letter. As I read, my world tilted on its axis. It was from a woman claiming to be Dean's half-sister, the product of an affair Arthur had years ago. She was demanding money to keep quiet about the scandal. I looked up at Dean, stunned. Is this why you've been taking money from Arthur's accounts? He nodded, his shoulders sagging. I didn't know what else to do. I couldn't let this destroy Dad's reputation. But the demands kept getting bigger, and then I started gambling, thinking I could win enough to pay her off. I felt a mix of emotions, anger at Dean's deception, sympathy for the impossible situation he'd found himself in, and a deep sadness for Arthur. Why didn't you tell me? I asked softly. I was ashamed, Dean admitted. I thought I could handle it on my own, but I've made such a mess of everything. Before I could respond, we heard a crash from Arthur's room. We rushed in to find him on the floor, gasping for breath. Arthur, I cried, kneeling beside him. Dean, call an ambulance. As we waited for the paramedics, I held Arthur's hand, my mind racing. How could I leave now, knowing the truth? But how could I stay after everything that had happened? At the hospital, Mary met us in the waiting room. As Dean paced anxiously, I pulled her aside and told her everything. Oh, Evelyn, she said, her eyes filling with tears. What a terrible burden you've all been carrying. The doctor emerged, his face grave. Mr. Thompson has had a severe stroke. The next 24 hours will be critical. As Dean broke down, I felt a strange calm settle over me. In that moment, I knew what I had to do. I approached Dean, my voice steady. I'm not going to abandon Arthur now. But things have to change, Dean. No more secrets, no more lies. We need to face this together, for Arthur's sake. Dean looked up at me, his eyes red-rimmed. What are you saying? I took a deep breath. I'm saying I'll put the divorce on hold for now. But you need to come clean about everything. To me, to Arthur when he's well enough, and to this woman claiming to be your sister. We'll figure out how to handle it together. As Dean nodded, relief and gratitude washing over his face, I felt the weight of my decision settle on my shoulders. The path ahead would be difficult, but I knew in my heart it was the right choice. For better or worse, we were family, and families face their demons together. The hospital room was eerily quiet, save for the steady beep of Arthur's heart monitor. I sat by his bedside, my hand gently clasping his, willing him to wake up. It had been 3 days since his stroke, and the doctors were cautiously optimistic about his recovery. Dean burst into the room, his face flushed with excitement. "Evelyn, I've got great news. I've found a way to fix everything." I raised an eyebrow, skeptical. "What are you talking about, Dean?" He pulled up a chair, leaning in close. "I've been in touch with a guy who can get us quick cash. We can pay off my sister, cover Dad's medical bills, and start fresh. All I need is your signature on a few documents." My heart sank. "Dean, no. We agreed no more secrets, no more schemes. What kind of documents?" He hesitated, then pulled out a stack of papers. "It's just a small loan against the house. We'll pay it back in no time, I promise." I leafed through the documents, my blood running cold as I realized the implications. "This isn't a small loan, Dean. This is practically signing away our home. How could you even consider this?" "What choice do we have?" he hissed, glancing nervously at Arthur. "We're drowning in debt, and my sister is threatening to go public. This is our only way out." I stood up, my voice shaking with anger. "No, Dean, this ends now. I won't let you gamble away our future on another one of your schemes." His face darkened. "You don't understand. If you don't sign these papers, I'll lose everything. We'll lose everything." "Maybe that's what needs to happen," I said softly, the realization hitting me like a ton of bricks. Maybe we need to lose it all to find our way back. Just then Mary walked in, her eyes widening as she sensed the tension in the room. "What's going on here?" I turned to her, my decision crystallizing. "Mary, I need your help. Can Arthur stay with you for a while when he's released?" "Of course," she said, looking confused. "But why?" I took a deep breath. "Because I'm leaving, Mary. I can't do this anymore." Dean jumped up, panic in his eyes. "Evelyn, you can't be serious. What about Dad? What about us?" "There is no us anymore, Dean," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "I've given everything I have to this family, but I can't keep sacrificing myself. It's time I start taking care of me." As the weight of my words sank in, Arthur's eyes fluttered open. "Evelyn," he croaked, his voice weak but clear. I rushed to his side, tears streaming down my face. "I'm here, Arthur. How are you feeling?" He squeezed my hand weakly. "I heard everything," he whispered. "You go. Be happy." A sob escaped me as I realized Arthur had been aware of our conversation. "Are you sure? I don't want to abandon you." Arthur's eyes flickered to Dean, then back to me. "Not abandoning, saving yourself. Proud of you." In that moment, looking into Arthur's eyes, I found the strength I needed. I turned to Dean, my resolve firm. "I'm going to my parents' house tonight. I'll be back tomorrow to pack my things. I want a divorce, Dean, for real this time." Dean's face crumpled, but I steeled myself against the guilt. I'd made my decision, and for once I was putting myself first. As I walked out of the hospital room, Mary followed me. "Evelyn, wait. Are you sure about this?" I nodded, feeling a strange mix of sadness and liberation. "I am, Mary. It's time for me to start a new chapter. I can't keep living in the shadows of Dean's mistakes." She pulled me into a tight hug. "I'm here for you, whatever you need." As I drove to my parents' house that night, my car packed with a few essentials, I felt a glimmer of hope for the first time in years. The road ahead would be difficult, but I was ready to face it head-on. It was time to reclaim my life, my career, and my happiness. And nothing, not even the love I still felt for Arthur, could hold me back anymore. The call came at 3 a.m., jolting me from a fitful sleep. Mary's voice trembled on the other end of the line. "Evelyn, you need to come to the hospital. It's Arthur." My heart raced as I threw on clothes and rushed out the door. The past month, living at my parents' house, had been a whirlwind of emotions and legal meetings, but Arthur had always been at the forefront of my mind. When I arrived at the hospital, Mary was waiting outside Arthur's room, her eyes red-rimmed. "The doctors say it won't be long now," she whispered. I steeled myself and entered the room. Arthur lay there, looking smaller and frailer than I'd ever seen him. Dean sat by his bedside, his head in his hands. "Evelyn," Arthur croaked, his eyes lighting up as he saw me. "You came." I rushed to his side, taking his hand in mine. "Of course I came, Arthur. I'm here." He smiled weakly. "Good. There's something I need to tell you both." Dean looked up, his face haggard. "Dad, save your strength." Arthur shook his head. "No time. Evelyn, in my desk, there's a letter, my will. You need to know." His words were cut off by a fit of coughing. A nurse rushed in, ushering us out of the room. Dean and I stood in the hallway, the tension between us palpable. "What's he talking about?" Dean demanded. "What will?" I shook my head, bewildered. "I don't know. I haven't seen any will." Hours passed in agonizing silence. Finally, the doctor emerged, his face solemn. "I'm sorry," he said softly. "He's gone." The world seemed to tilt on its axis. Despite our complicated history, I felt a deep ache for the kind man who had become like a father to me. In the days that followed, I threw myself into arranging the funeral, grateful for the distraction. It wasn't until the day before the service that I remembered Arthur's words about the will. With a sense of trepidation, I went to the house Dean and I had once shared. He wasn't home, which was a relief. I made my way to Arthur's study, my heart pounding as I opened his desk drawer. There, nestled among old papers, was an envelope with my name on it. With trembling hands, I opened it and began to read. "My dear Evelyn, if you're reading this, I'm no longer with you. I want you to know how much you've meant to me these past years. You've been more than a daughter-in-law. You've been the daughter I never had. It's because of this that I've made a decision that may come as a shock. I've amended my will to leave you my stock portfolio. It's not a fortune, but it should be enough to give you a fresh start. I know things have been difficult with Dean, and I'm sorry for the part I've played in that. But you deserve happiness, Evelyn. Use this gift to build the life you've always dreamed of. With all my love, Arthur." I sat there, stunned, tears streaming down my face. The implications of Arthur's gift were staggering. With this inheritance, I could pay off the debts Dean had accrued, restart my nursing career, maybe even open the small clinic I'd always dreamed of. Just then, I heard the front door slam. "Evelyn," Dean's voice called out. "What are you doing here?" I quickly folded the letter and stood up, my mind racing. How would Dean react to this news? Would he try to contest the will? The thought of another legal battle made my stomach churn. As Dean's footsteps approached the study, I took a deep breath. This was it, the moment that would determine the course of my future. I had to be strong, had to stand my ground, for Arthur's sake and for my own. "Dean," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "We need to talk. There's something you need to know about your father's will." The tension in the room was palpable as I stood face to face with Dean, Arthur's letter clutched tightly in my hand. His eyes darted between my face and the paper, a mix of confusion and suspicion etched across his features. "What's going on, Evelyn? What's this about Dad's will?" I took a deep breath, steeling myself for the storm I knew was coming. "Arthur left me his stock portfolio, Dean. He wanted me to have a fresh start." The color drained from Dean's face, replaced quickly by a flush of anger. "That's impossible. You're lying." "I'm not," I said, my voice steady despite my racing heart. "It's all here in this letter. He knew about our problems, Dean. He wanted to help me." Dean lunged forward, trying to snatch the letter from my hand. I stepped back, narrowly avoiding his grasp. "You manipulated him," he shouted. "You turned my own father against me." "No, Dean," I said firmly. "You did that all on your own." Just then the doorbell rang. We both froze, staring at each other. After a moment, I heard Mary's voice calling from outside. "Evelyn? Dean? Are you in there?" I moved towards the door, but Dean blocked my path. "Don't you dare," he hissed. "We can't hide from this, Dean," I said, pushing past him. "It's time for the truth to come out." I opened the door to find Mary standing there with a concerned look on her face. "What's going on?" she asked, taking in our tense postures. "Come in, Mary," I said, ignoring Dean's protests. "There's something you need to know." Over the next hour, I laid bare everything. Dean's gambling debts, his theft from Arthur's accounts, the mysterious half-sister demanding money. Mary listened in shocked silence, her eyes widening with each revelation. "Is this true, Dean?" she finally asked, her voice trembling. Dean's shoulders slumped in defeat. I didn't mean for it to go this far," he mumbled. Mary turned to me, her eyes filled with a mix of sorrow and admiration. "Oh, Evelyn, I had no idea you were carrying all of this. Why didn't you tell me sooner?" "I wanted to protect Arthur," I said softly. "And I guess a part of me still hoped Dean would change." Dean's head snapped up at that, his eyes blazing. "Change? You never gave me a chance, and now you're stealing my inheritance." "That's enough," Mary's voice cracked like a whip. "Dean, you've brought this on yourself. Evelyn has every right to that money after everything she's done for this family." As Dean and Mary argued, I felt a strange sense of calm wash over me. For the first time in years, I wasn't carrying the weight of Dean's secrets alone. The truth was out, and with it came a sense of liberation. Suddenly, Dean turned to me, his face contorted with desperation. "Evelyn, please, we can work this out. I'll change, I promise. Just don't take everything from me." For a moment, I faltered. Despite everything, a part of me still cared for the man I had once loved. But then I remembered Arthur's words in his letter. "You deserve happiness, Evelyn." I straightened my shoulders, looking Dean in the eye. "I'm not taking everything from you, Dean. I'm taking back what's rightfully mine. My freedom, my future, and the gift Arthur wanted me to have." Dean's face crumpled, and he sank to his knees, sobs racking his body. Mary moved to comfort him, but I knew my part in this scene was over. As I walked out of the house that had once been my prison, I felt a mix of emotions: relief, sadness, and a glimmer of hope for the future. The road ahead would be challenging, but for the first time in years, I was ready to face it head-on. Little did I know, the biggest challenge was yet to come. As I reached my car, my phone buzzed with a message from an unknown number. "I know about the inheritance. We need to talk. Your husband's sister." My hand trembled as I stared at the screen. Just when I thought it was over, a new storm was brewing on the horizon. My hands trembled as I sat across from Sarah, Dean's half-sister, in a quiet cafe. Her resemblance to Arthur was uncanny, a painful reminder of the family's tangled web of secrets. "I'm not here to cause trouble," Sarah said, her voice soft but firm. "I just want what's rightfully mine." I took a deep breath, steeling myself. "I understand, Sarah, but you have to know, the money Dean was sending you, it wasn't his to give. He was stealing from Arthur, from the family." Sarah's eyes widened in shock. "I had no idea. I thought Arthur was trying to make amends through Dean." As we talked, a plan began to form in my mind. "Sarah," I said, leaning forward, "what if we could honor Arthur's memory and make things right for everyone?" An hour later, I stood before Dean, Mary, and Sarah in Arthur's old study. The tension in the room was palpable. "I've made a decision," I announced, my voice steadier than I felt. "I'm going to use part of the inheritance to set up a trust for Sarah. It's what Arthur would have wanted." Dean's face contorted with rage. "You can't do that. It's my family's money." "No, Dean," Mary interjected, her voice firm. "It's Evelyn's money now, and she's doing the right thing." As Dean stormed out, slamming the door behind him, I felt a weight lift from my shoulders. For the first time in years, I was taking control of my life. The next few months were a whirlwind of change. I returned to nursing, throwing myself into work with a passion I'd forgotten I had. The remaining money from Arthur's stocks allowed me to open a small clinic in an underserved area of town. One evening, as I was locking up the clinic, I saw a familiar figure approaching. It was Dean, looking haggard and humbled. "Evelyn," he said, his voice hoarse, I need help." For a moment I felt the old urge to rush to his aid, but then I remembered everything we'd been through, everything I'd learned about myself. "I'm sorry, Dean," I said, my voice gentle but firm. "I can't be the one to save you anymore, but there are programs that can help if you're ready to change." As I watched him walk away, I felt a mix of sadness and relief. Our chapter together was truly over, but a new one was just beginning for me. Weeks later, I stood in front of a group of nursing students, sharing my experiences and the lessons I'd learned. As I spoke about resilience, self-worth, and the power of standing up for oneself, I saw the spark of understanding in their eyes. "Remember," I said, my voice strong and clear, "you are more than your circumstances. You have the power to rewrite your story, to choose happiness and fulfillment. After the lecture, Mary approached me, her eyes shining with pride. Arthur would be so proud of you, Evelyn. You've turned this difficult situation into something beautiful. I smiled, feeling a warmth spread through my chest. I couldn't have done it without your support, Mary, or without everything I learned from Arthur. As we walked out into the sunlight, I felt a sense of peace wash over me. The road had been long and painful, but it had led me here, to a place of strength, purpose, and self-discovery. That evening, as I sat on my porch watching the sunset, I thought about the journey I'd been on. From a woman trapped in a cycle of manipulation and self-doubt, I'd become someone who could stand tall, make tough decisions, and help others. I pulled out Arthur's letter, reading his words one last time. Use this gift to build the life you've always dreamed of. Tears pricked my eyes as I realized that's exactly what I'd done. And this was just the beginning. As the last rays of sunlight painted the sky in brilliant hues, I felt a surge of excitement for what the future held. I had reclaimed my life, my career, and my happiness. And now, with each new day, I was writing a new chapter, one filled with hope, purpose, and the unshakable knowledge that I was exactly where I was meant to be. The end was just the beginning, and I was ready for whatever came next. The morning started like any other. I rolled out of bed, the familiar sounds of my husband Jordan's gentle snoring filling the room. Padding across the cool hardwood floors, I made my way to the bathroom and splashed some water on my face, trying to shake off the lingering grogginess. As I glanced in the mirror, I noticed something that made my heart skip a beat. A faint spotting, barely noticeable, but enough to set off alarm bells in my mind. I tried to push the worries aside, telling myself it was probably nothing, but deep down, I knew better. Jordan and I had been trying for a baby for over a year now, and the constant disappointment had started to take its toll. Every month, the same cycle of hope followed by crushing despair. I tried to stay positive, focusing on my job as an elementary school teacher, but the longing for a child of our own was becoming harder and harder to ignore. Over breakfast, I debated whether or not to bring up my concerns to Jordan. He was always so supportive, but I could see the frustration in his eyes whenever the topic of children came up. It was as if he was starting to doubt whether it would ever happen for us. "Everything okay, babe?" Jordan asked, picking up on my distant gaze. I forced a smile. "Yeah, just lost in thought." He reached across the table and gave my hand a gentle squeeze. "Don't worry, it'll happen for us. We just have to be patient." His words were reassuring, but I couldn't help but feel a twinge of doubt. What if something was wrong with me? What if I could never give Jordan the family he so desperately wanted? The day passed in a blur, my mind constantly drifting back to the spotting and the nagging fear that something wasn't right. By the time I got home from work, I had made up my mind. I needed to see a doctor, if only for peace of mind. Jordan was supportive, as always, but I could see the concern etched across his face. We sat in the doctor's office, holding hands tightly, bracing ourselves for whatever news was to come. "Mrs. West," the doctor said, her voice somber, "the tests indicate that you're experiencing early ovarian aging. It's a condition that can make it difficult, if not impossible, to conceive naturally." The words hit me like a ton of bricks. Impossible to conceive. My world came crashing down around me as I struggled to process the news. Jordan pulled me close, whispering reassurances in my ear, but I could sense a shift in his demeanor. A flicker of doubt, of disappointment that he quickly tried to mask. As we drove home in silence, I couldn't help but wonder if this was the beginning of the end for us. Could our love survive this devastating blow, or would the strain of infertility be too much for us to bear? Over the next few months, Jordan and I tried to remain positive, exploring every possible treatment option. He was supportive at first, holding my hand through the grueling rounds of fertility drugs and the invasive procedures that left me emotionally and physically drained. "We'll get through this together," he would say, pulling me close after another disappointing negative test result. But as time went on, I could sense a subtle shift in his demeanor. The reassuring smiles became more forced, the comforting words rang a little hollower. It was as if the constant disappointment was starting to wear him down too. One night, after another failed attempt at conceiving, Jordan let his guard down. "I just don't understand why this is so difficult," he muttered, his voice laced with frustration. "My parents had 4 kids without even trying." The words stung, reminding me of my own perceived inadequacy. I tried to brush it off, but the comment lingered in the back of my mind, planting seeds of doubt that would only continue to grow. As the weeks turned into months, the distance between us seemed to widen. Jordan began to bury himself in his work, coming home late and retreating to his home office for hours on end. I tried to be understanding, knowing that he was dealing with his own disappointment in his own way, but the loneliness was becoming unbearable. One night, as I was cleaning up after dinner, I noticed Jordan's phone lighting up with a text notification. Normally, I wouldn't have thought twice about it, but something made me pause. A nagging feeling, a voice in the back of my mind telling me to take a closer look. I shouldn't have done it. I knew it was a violation of his privacy, but the temptation was too strong. I picked up his phone and felt my heart sink as I read the message. "Can't wait to see you tonight, babe. I'll bring the wine." The words seemed to jump off the screen, taunting me with their implications. My hands trembled as I scrolled through the rest of the conversation, each message more damning than the last. Jordan came home a few hours later, his eyes glazed over and his movements unsteady. The smell of perfume lingered on his clothes, a scent that wasn't mine. "Where have you been?" I demanded, my voice shaking with a mixture of anger and heartbreak. He looked at me, his expression a mixture of guilt and defiance. "Out with some colleagues from work, we had a few drinks to celebrate a project launch." The lie was so blatant, so transparent, that it only added insult to injury. I wanted to scream, to rage against the betrayal, but the words caught in my throat. "I know about the texts, Jordan," I finally managed to choke out. "I know you're seeing someone else." For a moment he looked stunned, like a deer caught in the headlights. Then his expression hardened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "Is that what you think?" he sneered. "Maybe if you could give me a child, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere for satisfaction." The cruelty of his words cut me to the core. In that moment, I saw the true depths of his selfishness, his willingness to place all the blame on me for our struggles. As he stormed off to the bedroom, slamming the door behind him, I sank to the floor, tears streaming down my face. The man I thought I knew was gone, replaced by someone cold and callous, someone capable of the ultimate betrayal. But even in my grief, a spark of determination began to flicker within me. Jordan may have thought he had the upper hand, but he had no idea what I was capable of. The game was just beginning, and I intended to play to win. The revelation of Jordan's infidelity hit me like a ton of bricks, but I refused to let it break me. As the days turned into weeks, I found myself retreating into a shell, isolating myself from friends and family as I grappled with the pain and betrayal. Jordan, for his part, seemed wholly unrepentant. He would come and go as he pleased, spending more and more time away from home, no doubt in the company of his mistress. The few times we did cross paths, the air was thick with tension and unspoken accusations. "Why are you doing this to us?" I finally worked up the courage to ask one evening as he was heading out the door. He paused, his hand on the doorknob, and turned to face me with a cold, emotionless stare. "Maybe if you could give me what I really want, I wouldn't have to look elsewhere." The words cut deep, but I refused to let him see how much they hurt me. Instead, I met his gaze with a steely determination, silently vowing that he would pay for his cruelty. As the weeks dragged on, Jordan became increasingly brazen in his deception. He would come home late, reeking of cheap perfume and alcohol, and stumble off to bed without so much as a word. It was as if he had completely given up on even trying to hide his indiscretions. One night, as I sat alone in our living room, staring blankly at the flickering TV screen, I heard a faint, buzzing noise. It took me a moment to realize it was coming from Jordan's jacket pocket, which he had carelessly tossed over the back of the couch. Part of me knew I shouldn't look, that I was only setting myself up for more heartache. But another, more primal part of me couldn't resist the temptation. With trembling hands, I reached into the pocket and pulled out his phone. The screen was lit up with a string of text messages, each one more damning than the last, explicit photos, suggestive comments, and promises of secret rendezvous that made my stomach churn. As I scrolled through the messages, a sense of rage began to build within me. How dare he? How dare he betray me in such a callous, brazen way? The man I had once loved, the man I had vowed to stand by through thick and thin, was nothing more than a snake in the grass, a selfish, deceitful coward. That's when I made a decision. I wasn't going to sit idly by and let Jordan continue to humiliate and disrespect me. No, it was time to take matters into my own hands. If he wanted to play games, then I would play too, and I would make sure I came out on top. From that moment on, I became a woman possessed. I started keeping a meticulous log of Jordan's comings and goings, documenting his every lie and indiscretion. I gathered evidence, screenshots of the damning text messages, receipts for expensive gifts and hotel rooms that he had no doubt charged to our joint account. And all the while, I played the part of the oblivious, dutiful wife, lulling Jordan into a false sense of security. He had no idea that the ground was shifting beneath his feet, that his carefully constructed web of lies was about to come crashing down around him. It was a dangerous game I was playing, but I was fueled by a burning desire for justice, for revenge. Jordan had made a grave mistake in underestimating me, and he was about to learn that lesson the hard way. Little did he know, the true storm was only just beginning to brew. As the weeks passed, I found myself becoming consumed by my quest for revenge, meticulously gathering evidence of Jordan's misdeeds. But even as I built my case against him, a part of me still clung to the hope that it was all some terrible misunderstanding. That hope was shattered one night at a neighborhood party. Jordan and I had agreed to make an appearance, putting on a united front for the sake of appearances. As we mingled with our friends and neighbors, making small talk and sipping lukewarm beer, I couldn't help but feel a sense of unease. And then, out of the corner of my eye, I saw her. A petite blonde woman, no older than 25, sauntering across the room with a confidence that bordered on arrogance. Our eyes met briefly, and she flashed me a sickly sweet smile that sent a chill down my spine. "Who's that?" I asked Jordan, trying to keep my voice casual. He followed my gaze, and I saw his expression shift ever so slightly. "Oh, that's Kaylee. She's new to the neighborhood." The way he said her name, the slight catch in his breath, told me everything I needed to know. This was the woman he had been seeing, the one he had been sneaking around with behind my back. As the party wore on, I found myself unable to take my eyes off of Kaylee. She moved through the crowd with ease, flirting shamelessly with any man who crossed her path, including Jordan. At one point, I caught them engaged in what appeared to be a heated conversation, their faces inches apart as they whispered back and forth. Kaylee's hand lingered a little too long on Jordan's arm, and I felt a surge of jealousy and anger coursing through my veins. When Jordan finally broke away and made his way back to me, I couldn't hold my tongue any longer. "So, who is she really?" I asked, my voice low and laced with accusation. Jordan's eyes widened, and he quickly tried to compose himself. "She's just a neighbor, babe. I was welcoming her to the community." The lie was so blatant, so insulting, that I felt myself shaking with rage. "Don't treat me like an idiot, Jordan. I saw the way she was touching you, the way you were looking at her." For a moment, he seemed caught off guard, like a deer in the headlights. Then his expression hardened, and he let out a bitter laugh. "You want to know the truth?" he spat. "She's the woman who's going to give me what you can't. A family." The words hit me like a physical blow, knocking the wind out of me. I stumbled back, my vision blurring with tears as the weight of his betrayal crashed down upon me. Jordan must have seen the pain in my eyes, because his expression softened ever so slightly. "Look, Lila, I'm sorry, but this isn't working. We both know it. Maybe it's time we face the fact that we want different things." I wanted to scream, to lash out at him for his callousness, his complete disregard for my feelings. But somehow, I found the strength to hold my tongue. "You're right, Jordan," I said, my voice surprisingly steady. "It is time we faced the facts." And with that, I turned on my heel and walked away, leaving him standing there, stunned and alone. As I made my way through the crowd, my mind was racing. Jordan had shown his true colors, and there was no going back. The gloves were off, and I was prepared to fight dirty if that's what it took to bring him down. Little did he know, I had been preparing for this moment all along. And when the time came, I would be ready to deliver the ultimate revenge. After the devastating confrontation at the neighborhood party, I knew I had to take action. Jordan had made it crystal clear that he was done with our marriage, that he was ready to move on and start a new life with his young mistress. But I wasn't about to let him off that easily. Not after everything he had put me through. For days, I seethed in silence, biding my time and waiting for the perfect opportunity to strike. Jordan, emboldened by his admission, became even more brazen in his infidelity, spending nights away from home and making little effort to hide his liaisons with Kaylee. It was during one of these extended absences that I finally made my move. Using the wealth of evidence I had gathered over the past weeks, the incriminating text messages, the hotel receipts, even grainy photographs of Jordan and Kaylee in compromising positions, I began to piece together a damning case against him. I knew that if I wanted to truly hit him where it hurt, I needed to expose his betrayal in a way that would humiliate him, strip him of his false sense of superiority, and bring him crashing back down to earth. And so I hatched a plan. Late one night, after Jordan had once again failed to come home, I slipped out of the house and made my way to his office. I knew the security codes, the hidden spare key, all the little tricks he thought he had kept so carefully guarded. With trembling hands, I accessed his computer, rifling through files and folders until I found what I was looking for: his personal email and social media accounts, the digital lifeblood that he so carelessly left unprotected. One by one, I began forwarding the incriminating evidence to his closest friends and colleagues, his family members, even his boss. Explicit photos, damning text conversations, receipts for extravagant gifts and hotel stays, nothing was left out. And then, just for good measure, I took to his social media accounts, broadcasting his infidelity for the whole world to see. To my so-called husband Jordan West, I wrote, my fingers flying across the keyboard with a newfound sense of empowerment. This is the truth you've been so desperate to hide. I hit send, and just like that, the floodgates were open. Jordan's carefully curated facade came crumbling down, his sordid secrets laid bare for all to witness. As I made my way back home, a strange sense of calm washed over me. I knew that the fallout would be nuclear, that Jordan's world was about to implode in spectacular fashion. But for the first time in months, I felt like I was finally in control of my own destiny. Jordan came stumbling in just before dawn, his shirt rumpled and his hair disheveled. He reeked of alcohol and cheap perfume, the telltale signs of another night spent in Kaylee's arms. He didn't even look at me as he staggered towards the bedroom, lost in his own drunken haze. It wasn't until later that morning, when his phone began to buzz incessantly with a barrage of calls and text messages, that the reality of what I had done began to sink in. "What the hell is going on?" he demanded, his voice thick with panic as he scrolled through the damning evidence that I had so carefully curated. I simply shrugged, a small, satisfied smile playing across my lips. "I believe the truth is finally out, Jordan." His eyes widened in horror as the full weight of my actions hit him. In that moment, I could see the arrogance, the smug sense of superiority draining from his face. "You're going to pay for this," he hissed, his hands balling into fists at his sides. But I wasn't afraid. Not anymore. "No, Jordan," I said, my voice calm and steady. "It's you who's going to pay." And with that, I turned and walked away, leaving him to face the consequences of his own actions. The battle had been won, but the war was far from over. In the aftermath of my public exposure of Jordan's infidelity, the fallout was swift and brutal. His once thriving career lay in tatters, his reputation irreparably damaged by the sordid details I had so meticulously laid bare. Friends and family members who had once rallied around him now turned their backs, disgusted by his betrayal. Even his own parents, once so proud and doting, could barely bring themselves to look him in the eye. As for me, I found myself riding a wave of vindication, basking in the knowledge that I had finally taken back control of my life, my dignity. Jordan had thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash, but I had proven him wrong in spectacular fashion. Still, there was one final piece of the puzzle that needed to be put into place. A few weeks after the explosive revelation, Jordan and I found ourselves seated in the familiar waiting room of our fertility doctor's office. The air between us was thick with tension, a palpable sense of animosity that had only grown more pronounced in the wake of my retaliation. "Mrs. West? The doctor will see you now," the receptionist called out, her voice laced with a hint of pity that made my skin crawl. Jordan rose to his feet, shooting me a venomous glare as he brushed past me and made his way towards the examination room. I followed closely behind, steeling myself for what was to come. "Well, what a pleasure to see you both again," the doctor said, her tone dripping with sarcasm as we took our seats. "I must say, your personal lives have certainly been eventful as of late." Jordan shifted uncomfortably in his chair, his jaw clenched tightly. "Can we just cut to the chase, Doc? I'm sure you didn't call us here to gossip." The doctor arched an eyebrow, clearly unimpressed by his bravado. "Very well, then. Mr. West, after reviewing your latest test results, I'm afraid I have some rather unfortunate news." She paused, letting the words hang in the air for a moment before delivering the final blow. "It appears that you are suffering from a severe case of male factor infertility. Your sperm count and motility levels are well below the normal range, making it highly unlikely that you would be able to conceive a child naturally." The room seemed to spin around me as the doctor's words sank in. Jordan, the man who had so callously blamed me for our inability to have children, the man who had sought solace in the arms of another woman in pursuit of his dream family, he was the one with the fertility issue all along. For a moment, time seemed to stand still. Then Jordan let out a bitter laugh, shaking his head in disbelief. "You've got to be kidding me," he spat. "After everything, after all the hell you've put me through, you're trying to pull this stunt?" The doctor's expression hardened. "I assure you, Mr. West, this is no stunt. The test results are conclusive and they speak for themselves." Jordan opened his mouth to protest, but I cut him off, unable to contain the fury that was bubbling up inside me. "You know, Jordan, I almost feel sorry for you," I said, my voice dripping with contempt. "All this time you've been pointing the finger at me, accusing me of being the reason we couldn't have children. You let your own selfishness and insecurity drive you into the arms of another woman, all because you were too blind to see the truth." His eyes widened as the realization began to sink in, the weight of his own lies and betrayal crashing down upon him. You knew," he stammered, his face pale. "This whole time, you knew." I couldn't help but let out a bitter laugh. "Of course I knew. Did you really think I was going to let you get away with what you did to me, to us?" The doctor cleared her throat, clearly uncomfortable with the unfolding confrontation. "Perhaps we should continue this discussion another time, when emotions have had a chance to settle." But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. "No, doctor, I think it's time Jordan heard the full truth," I said, turning to face him head-on. "You see, while you were off gallivanting with that little tramp, I was busy collecting evidence. Every sordid detail, every dirty little secret. I have it all." Jordan's face drained of color as the weight of my words sank in. In that moment, he knew he had been beaten at his own game, outmaneuvered and outsmarted by the very woman he had so callously discarded. "And now, thanks to your own carelessness, the whole world knows exactly what kind of man you really are." I continued, relishing in the look of abject horror on his face. A liar, a cheat, a coward who was too weak to face his own shortcomings. Silence hung heavy in the air, punctuated only by the sound of Jordan's ragged breathing. For once in his life he was utterly speechless, stripped of his bravado and left to confront the harsh reality of his own actions. As we left the doctor's office, Jordan trailing behind me like a wounded animal, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The battle had been long and hard fought, but in the end justice had prevailed, and for the first time in a long time I felt truly free. In the days following the devastating revelation of Jordan's infertility, I found myself riding a wave of vindication and triumph. After months of being gaslit and betrayed, the tables had finally turned, and Jordan was the one left reeling in the aftermath of his own lies and deceit. But my quest for justice was far from over. As word of Jordan's indiscretions spread like wildfire through our small community, I knew I had to strike while the iron was hot. I had already exposed him to our closest friends and colleagues, but there were still those who remained blissfully unaware of the true depths of his betrayal. And so, I hatched a plan, one that would ensure Jordan's humiliation was complete and inescapable. It was a warm summer evening when I invited both of our families over for a casual get-together. Jordan, still reeling from the bombshell I had dropped at the doctor's office, was in no position to protest. One by one, our loved ones trickled in, exchanging pleasantries and sipping on cool drinks as the golden sun dipped below the horizon. Jordan plastered on a forced smile, doing his best to maintain the illusion of normalcy despite the palpable tension in the air. Little did they know, I had already set the stage for the ultimate reveal. As the night wore on and the conversations began to flow more freely, I seized my opportunity. Clearing my throat, I clinked my glass with a fork, commanding the attention of the room. "Friends, family, thank you all for being here tonight," I began, my voice steady and confident. "I know these past few months have been trying for all of us, but I think it's time we address the elephant in the room." Jordan's eyes went wide, his knuckles whitening as he gripped the arms of his chair. He knew what was coming, but he was powerless to stop it. "You see, for a long time I believed that our struggles to conceive were my fault," I continued, my gaze sweeping across the rapt faces of our guests. "Jordan led me to believe that I was the one with the fertility issues, that my body was letting us down." A collective gasp rippled through the room, and I could see the looks of pity and concern etched on their faces. They had no idea what was about to hit them. "But the truth is, Jordan was the one who was unable to give me the child I so desperately wanted," I said, my voice growing stronger with each word. "He was the one who was shooting blanks, so to speak." Jordan let out a strangled sound, his face flushing a deep crimson as the gravity of my words sank in. But I wasn't done yet, not by a long shot. And instead of being honest with me, instead of facing the truth like a man, he chose to betray me in the worst possible way. I paused for effect, letting the weight of my next words linger in the air. "He cheated on me, with a woman half his age, no less." The room erupted in a cacophony of gasps and murmurs, eyes darting between Jordan and me in disbelief. "That's a lie!" Jordan shouted, shooting to his feet in a rage. "She's twisting the truth, manipulating all of you." But it was too late. With a few deft taps on my phone, I had already set my plan in motion. Suddenly, the room was filled with the unmistakable sounds of Jordan's voice, captured in a damning audio recording I had made during one of our many heated arguments. "You're never going to be able to give me what I really want." His voice crackled through the speakers, laced with venom. "A real family, with kids of my own. Maybe it's time we face the facts. This marriage is over." A deafening silence fell over the room as the recording faded out, punctuated only by the sound of Jordan's ragged breathing. "You see, Jordan thought he could have it all," I said, my voice ringing out in the stillness. "He thought he could discard me like yesterday's trash, all in pursuit of his twisted dream of starting a new family with his mistress." I let the words hang in the air, letting them sink in for all to hear. But what he didn't count on was me fighting back. He never expected me to uncover the truth about his own infertility, his own lies and deceptions. Jordan opened his mouth to speak, but no words came out. He was utterly defeated, laid bare before the very people he had once tried so hard to impress. As our loved ones filed out one by one, casting disgusted glances in Jordan's direction, I couldn't help but feel a sense of triumph. The battle had been hard fought, but in the end, justice had prevailed. And as I watched Jordan slink away, his head hung in shame, I knew that my quest for revenge was finally complete. In the aftermath of my explosive revelation, Jordan's world came crashing down around him. His once promising career was left in tatters, his reputation irreparably tarnished by the sordid details of his infidelity and deception. It didn't take long for the fallout to reach Kaylee, the young mistress who had so brazenly inserted herself into our marriage. As the truth of Jordan's lies and my vengeance came to light, she was quickly cast aside, reduced to a mere footnote in the twisted saga of our unraveling. I'll never forget the look on her face when she realized the depths of Jordan's betrayal, not just towards me, but towards her as well. The tears streamed down her cheeks as she confronted him, demanding answers that he simply couldn't provide. "You told me you were going to leave her," she had sobbed, her voice thick with anger and heartbreak. "You said we were going to have a family together." Jordan, for once, was rendered speechless. The mask of arrogance and bravado he had worn for so long had finally slipped away, leaving him exposed and vulnerable. "Kaylee, he stammered, his eyes darting around the room in desperation. "It's not what you think." But she wasn't having any of it. With a strength I didn't know she possessed, she gathered her things and stormed out, leaving Jordan to wallow in the wreckage of his own making. As for me, I found myself, slowly but surely, picking up the pieces of my shattered life. The road to healing was a long and arduous one, but with each passing day I could feel the weight of Jordan's betrayal lifting from my shoulders. I threw myself into my work, pouring my heart and soul into teaching and connecting with my students in a way I never had before. Their smiling faces, their boundless energy and enthusiasm became a balm for my wounded spirit. And slowly but surely, I began to rebuild my social circles, surrounding myself with people who truly cared for me, friends and family members who had stood by me through the darkest of times. It wasn't easy, and there were moments when the pain and anger threatened to consume me once again. But I was determined to emerge from this experience stronger, more resilient, and more grateful for the people and things that truly mattered. As for Jordan, his fall from grace was as spectacular as it was well-deserved. Without the support of his family and friends, and with his professional reputation in tatters, he found himself adrift, grasping at straws in a desperate attempt to salvage what was left of his life. The last time I saw him was at the courthouse, where we had gathered to finalize the terms of our divorce. He looked like a shell of his former self, his once confident demeanor replaced by a haunted, hollow gaze. "Lila," he said, his voice barely above a whisper as he approached me in the hallway. I don't know what to say." I regarded him coolly, my heart hardened by the months of pain and betrayal he had put me through. "Then don't say anything," I replied, my voice firm and unwavering. "You've said more than enough already." He opened his mouth as if to protest, but the words seemed to die on his lips. Instead, he simply nodded, a flicker of resignation passing across his face, and with that, he turned and walked away, disappearing from my life for good. In the months and years that followed, I found myself gradually letting go of the anger and bitterness that had once consumed me. Jordan's transgressions, while painful, no longer held the same power over me. I had emerged from the ashes of our failed marriage like a phoenix, reborn and reinvigorated, ready to embrace the next chapter of my life with open arms. And as I looked towards the future, one thing was certain. I would never again allow myself to be defined by the actions of others, nor would I ever let someone like Jordan take away my sense of self-worth and dignity. I was my own woman, strong and resilient, and nothing, not even the cruelest of betrayals, could ever change that.